I'm Nikki, and this is Built from the Mess, where we talk about the hard seasons, the healing, and how you can still build something beautiful. Hi, guys. Nikki here again, back with episode 4 of Built from the Mess. This episode is potentially going to be a little emotional. This was a very difficult time in my life. However, I want everyone to still know that this is a success story. There may have been hard things and bumps and a lot of trials and tribulations in my life, but I do know that I would not be where I am today without learning all of those things and going through every bit of that. With that being said, I know I kind of left off at the last episode where I had chosen to move away from my hometown, which I thought was the right move. I really did. I was struggling here financially to raise 2 children, take care of my little sister, and seemed like could not get ahead in life with really anything. So my ex-husband was able to obtain a job down there ahead of time. And then it was kind of a chosen decision to move down there. I would be close to my mom, my sister, my older sister, my grandparents, things like that. I thought that was the right decision. However, it was still scary. I had lived there once before. I didn't like it. But I was an adult now with kids thinking this was the right option. So moved down there. That is where I did end up pregnant with my youngest son. My 2 youngest children are about a year apart. So I did have them very, very close together and really thought I would get ahead. Right after having my youngest son, I had to work 2 jobs, trying to just make a little bit of money to stay financially stable. That was very difficult. The person that I was married to at the time did not do very well with finances. And I don't know how we ever managed to not completely go under, although I look back now and think that we did in certain times. I started to feel like things were just off. I was close with my mom, my sisters, and I loved that part of being there. But I did not love how I started to be treated down there. My ex-husband started getting very secretive, started lying. I feel like started being kind of sneaky, things like that. So I just really started to feel like more alone and more alone and more alone. And here I was struggling to raise 3 kids, work 2 jobs. I was working at a feed store down there. I was then working on the weekends at a downtown club as a bouncer just to make ends meet. I was struggling with how often I got to sleep, how often I got to spend time with my kids. I felt like I was struggling in every aspect of my life, trying to be a good mom, trying to be a good sister, trying to be a good wife, trying to be all these things for everyone else, but still only 21 years old, had no idea what path I wanted in life, had no idea what I wanted to be in life, knew that I had to be a good mom, knew that I had to make sure that the people that needed me the most got what they needed. And that is what I did. I strived to always make sure that my kids got what they needed. I will say I fell short of that sometimes, yes. Why did I choose to stay for so long? I have no idea. I chose to stay year after year, feeling more and more betrayed, more and more things showing me that I shouldn't stay, that I was being betrayed, and still telling myself like I didn't want that for my kids. It was not that big of a deal. Maybe it wasn't true. The rumors, the things I would hear, the things I would see, the things on the phone, because we were moving into this world of technology where cell phones were becoming really big. Everybody was texting, things like that. I really struggled with myself, my image of myself, how I thought of myself. I did not think of myself as a pretty woman. I did not think of myself as a successful woman. I did not see anything good in myself in those times other than I was doing my best to be a good mom. And that's all I had. That's all I could give at that time. Raising 3 kids, feeling like you're mostly doing it by yourself was very difficult. I felt like I did it mostly by myself. I felt like the other half that was supposed to be putting these 3 people ahead of himself never did. It was always about other things, alcohol or hunting or things like that, that to me should have been put on the back burner if you can not pay your bills all the way. And I felt like that never really changed. I felt like my kids always got a suffering little bit of that. Although I tried to save, I tried to build, I tried to do more. The two jobs just were not enough and found ourselves in a very bad financial situation. Vehicles talking about being repossessed, not sure if you could pay your rent, not sure if you can buy groceries, none of that. Felt like in those years, I also chose to drink. I don't know if it was, if I fell in, would it then lighten the burden of me being this person that's opposite of everything else and everything around me. Really wanted to be more for my kids. I always looked and said, what more could I do for my kids? What more can I be for my kids? Self-image for me in those years was probably the absolute hardest thing that I've went through internally within myself. I did not have any good insurance in that time. I was not going to a dentist in that time. I was obviously brushing my teeth, but I had had so many kids so close together. My teeth just started breaking off into pieces. I was having to have teeth pulled out of my face because they were abscessed. I could not afford to get them fixed. Therefore, they were just getting pulled out. My teeth were broken. I didn't want to smile to the public. I didn't want to smile for a photo. I really don't have a ton of photos of me with my children when my children were little. And that is a very sad thing to me. If there's things I could go back in my life and change, it would be to make sure I took care of myself for the sake of my children. And I did try to take care of myself. I can't say I exercised or ate super healthy. I can't say I was super overweight by no means. I've always fluctuated with some weight here and there, within the years. And it just was a hard time. My grandparents lived close by. I did enjoy the years that I had with my grandmother. My grandmother has passed back in 2020. And so I'm very thankful for those years that I was around before she went. I did get to spend those few years with my sisters because I don't live near my sisters anymore. And that's okay. I mean, I love my sisters dearly. And I do miss them a lot, but we visit. I get to see my sisters. I am glad I got those few years near my mom, although I don't feel like I was as close to my mom in those years. I don't remember my mom being around like every day for things. I remember her being at my kids' birthday parties when we lived down there. And I only lived down there a few years. I was not there for very long, 2.5 years at most. And that was some hard couple years, although I was near some family that I really love and I really do miss them even now. I had a rough few years. I do feel as though when I started to pick out the things that were getting worse within my marriage at the time, that it was more secrets and more secrets. And then it was, maybe this isn't the place. Maybe we don't need to be here. This isn't right. And I always question, like, why was it every time there was a bump in the road or things got bad, it was runaway? Like, I started to see this like runaway pattern, runaway, runaway. And I'm not really sure why. That led us to moving back to my hometown. There was another job offer that came up back here. And I said, okay, I was sad to leave my mom, sad to leave my sisters, sad to leave my grandmother. But in my heart, I was like, I need to do what's best for my kids. I feel like this was a grass is always greener on the other side. Like the grass was greener when we went down there. Now the grass is greener back here. And I started to kind of see that. I tried to figure out how to get out. I tried to save. I tried to hide money aside. Could I do it on my own? I questioned it all the time. I questioned it. Can I do this on my own? Can I raise these 3 babies on my own? Can I do it? And I kept saying, no, I can't. No, I can't. No, I can't. And I never understand. I still sometimes don't understand why. Why did I not stand up for myself in those years? I deserved better than that. I deserved better. I deserved to be treated like a mother and a wife and a human. I didn't deserve that to be done to me. No one deserves that to be done to them. If you're in those shoes and you wonder, do you deserve better? Do you not deserve to be treated that way? How can you get out? I can tell you from experience, you should figure out how. I wish I had, because when the shoe dropped, I feel like it hurt in different ways if I had just chosen to be strong and go on my own. Coming back to my hometown was not a bad thing. I do not look back and go, that was a bad decision. It was not a bad decision. I still struggled the next few years financially, with the infidelity, with the secrets, the lies, the not being able to keep a job for my other half. I did find a job as a local bartender here. And I thought that would be just enough money to help, and still struggled financially. I feel like every turn of the corner, I was broke. I couldn't figure out how to feed my kids. I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids. I didn't know how I was going to pay all these bills. I went a long time before I could ever get a new pair of jeans, even if I needed a new pair of jeans, if I needed a new shirt, I did try my absolute best to make sure my kids got new before I ever got anything. And they did. My kids were always fed. It was not always a 5-course meal by no means, but my kids were always fed. My kids never went hungry. And looking back to those years, I sat alone in my feelings. I never expressed my feelings. I never talked to anyone about my feelings. I never expressed in so many words that I was hurting as bad as I was. And I was hurting. I still did not feel pretty. I did not feel wanted or seen or needed or any of those things within many, many, many relationships in my life, down to family members and spouse and all of that. It was a rough time emotionally for me. I wish now, if I could go back, I wish now that I would have gotten into therapy for myself. I wish I would have been able to talk to somebody and tell somebody what I was feeling. How could I make it better? How could I make sure I was okay? I really struggled to be the best mom that I could be. But did I struggle to be the best mom I could be? Absolutely. Then to sit in all those feelings that I didn't deserve. I didn't deserve to be treated that way. I didn't deserve to be in that situation, but I didn't know any different. I had only known that relationship since I was about 16, and I was young when that relationship started. Feel as though that relationship even blossomed because I had parents who I could not depend on. And at the time when I was 16 and young and not fully grown or fully developed or any of those things, I felt in that moment that I could depend on that person. And as the years went by, I learned very quickly that I could not depend on that relationship. I could not depend on that person. I didn't like the way we were trying to raise our kids. I felt differently and never felt like I could speak up and say anything. I just felt like I could never have an opposite opinion or say, I don't like that or anything. There was no conversations of, I don't see it that way. It was always my way or the highway, I felt like. And that's not okay when you're raising children. And so in those times, the finances that were a struggle, the emotions that were a struggle, those types of things were always just dragging me down. And I never saw a full potential in those years. I never saw myself blossom or grow or mature or anything. I still felt like I was a naive 18-year-old mother. And I knew something had to change, but I didn't know how to change it. And I didn't know when to change it. I didn't know any of the details. And then it sort of just happened on its own that he chose to leave and go to work in another state and not come back. And at the time, that was hard and difficult. And I didn't know what I was going to do. How was I going to pay bills? How was I going to raise these kids? How was I going to do a million and one things? How was I going to do all this on my own? And I sort of crumbled. I feel like I crumbled there for a little bit. A few weeks there that I just crumbled, and I would lay in bed and go, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I don't know if I can do this. And I had a few people in my life at the time that said, you can, you're capable, you're a great mother, keep going. I moved into my own home. I got some help from my sister. She brought me this little car that I needed to drive instead of a big, huge truck that I could not manage with 3 kids all on my own. And I just started one day at a time, building a piece by piece by piece by piece. And one day, sorry, I'm going to get a little emotional. One day, a coworker of mine said, you need to meet this guy that I know. And I said, you are crazy. I am not having it. I am focusing on myself. I'm focusing on being a mom. I want to be better for my babies. And I said, no way, you're crazy. And he said, no, really, you should. And I said, no, you're crazy. And on the flip side, he was also telling this guy, you need to meet this girl. And he said, you're crazy. He was also going through a very similar situation as I was. And we both said, you're crazy. And somehow he walked into the bar that night I was working and sat down. And I knew from that moment that this person was going to be someone who would turn my world upside down in the best of ways. And I'm happy to say this is my husband. And we have been married almost 12 years. We have helped raise all 5 of our babies together. All 5 of our kids were very small when we met. And to me, that's success. To me, pulling yourself out of a dark spot and still saying, I believe. I believe that there is someone out there who won't treat me that way. I believe that someone wants me and deserves me and will treat me amazing, and my kids, and vice versa. Things were very hard in those later years of my first marriage. That to find someone who doted on me, who loved me, who told me I was beautiful, who told me I was a great mother. I couldn't ask for better. To be a role model for my children, to be a lover to me, to be a best friend to me. He's been the best thing other than my children that's ever happened to me in my life. So if you're in this spot of, will I ever find someone? Will someone ever love my kids? Will someone ever want to raise a family and want to be by my side through all of the yuckies? They're out there. That person is out there, I promise. And they will stand by you. They will love you. There will be bumpy times. Absolutely. But they will be there for you, and they will be there for your kids. Sometimes the mess is just part of the process, even when it doesn't feel that way. This is Nikki, and this is Built from the Mess.